The cold season is thus passed in a very monotonous fashion, both in the hamlet of the enclosure and the menagerie of the cages. The scorpions go out neither by day nor at night, as I observe by the barricade of sand which remains untouched at the entrance to the home. Are they torpid? Are they torpid? Not a bit of it! My frequent visits show them always ready for action, with curved and threatening tails. If the weather grows cooler, they retreat to the bottom of their burrows. If it is fine, they return to the threshold to warm their backs by the touch of the sunny stone. Nothing more for the moment. The anchorite's life is spent in long spells of meditation, either in the cool, moist crypt or under the porch of the house behind the sandy barricade. In the course of April, a sudden change takes place. In the cages, the shelter of the potsherds is abandoned. Gravely, the occupants roam around the arena, clamber up the trellis, and stand there, even by day. Several of them sleep out and do not go home again, preferring the out-of-door distractions to soft slumbers in the alcove underground. In the hamlet, in the enclosure, events are more serious. Some of the inhabitants, selected from the smaller, leave the house at night and go wandering without my knowing what becomes of them. I expect to see them return at the end of their stroll, for no other part of the paddock has stones to suit them. Well, not one comes home. All that have gone have disappeared for good. Soon, the big ones also display the same vagabond mood. And at last, the emigration becomes so active that a moment is at hand when I shall have nothing left of my free colony. Farewell to my lovingly cherished plans. The open-air community on which I base my fondest hopes becomes rapidly depopulated. Its inhabitants make off, vanish I know not whither. All my seeking fails to recover a single one of the runaways. Great ill calls for great remedies. I need an insuperable precinct, much more extensive than that of the cages, which establishments do not give scope to the pastimes of my specimens. I have a forcing frame in which some fleshy plants are stored during the winter. It goes to a depth of 3 feet into the ground. The brickwork is plastered and smooth with all the care that the mason's trowel and wet rag can give it. I cover the bottom with fine sand and large flat stones distributed here and there. Having made these preparations, I install inside the frame, each under his own stone, the remaining scorpions, and those which I have captured this very morning complete my collection. With the aid of this vertical barrier shall I this time retain my specimens and see what interests me so greatly? I shall see nothing at all. Next morning, all of them, old and new, have disappeared. There were 20 of them, and not one remains. Had I reflected ever so little, I should have expected this. At the season of persistent rain in the autumn, how often have I not found the black scorpion hiding in the crevices of the windows, fleeing the dampness of his usual retreats, the dark corners of the yards. He has clambered up to me by scaling the front wall to the height of the first story. The slight roughness of the plaster was enough to enable his grapnels to make the perpendicular ascent. Despite his corpulence, the Languedocian is as good a climber as the black scorpion. I have a proof of it before my eyes. A barrier 3 feet high, as smooth as a wash of common mortar can make it, has not stopped one of my captives. In a single night, the whole band has decamped from the frame. Rearing in the open air, even within walls, is recognized as being impractical. The lack of discipline in the flock nullifies the shepherd's devices. One resource alone remains, that of internment under cover. Thus the year ends, with some 10 pans standing on the large table in my study. Out of doors is prohibited. Those night prowlers, the cats, seeing something move about in my appliances, would upset everything. On the other hand, the population is restricted under each cover and amounts to 2 or 3 inhabitants at most. There is no space. In the absence of a sufficiency of neighborhoods, and also of the violent exposure to the sun which they enjoyed on their native hills, the prisoners on my table seem smitten with homesickness and hardly respond to my expectations. Cowering under their potsherds or hanging to the trellis, most of them slumber, dreaming of liberty. The small results which I obtain from my bored specimens is far from satisfying me. I want something more than this. The close of the year is spent in gleaning petty facts and making plans for a better establishment. The outcome of these plans is a glazed prison. The outcome of these plans is a glazed prison whose panes will give no hold to the grapnels. The outcome of these plans is a glazed prison whose panes will give no hold to the grapnels and will make climbing impossible. The joiner builds me a frame. The glazier completes the work. I myself varnish the woodwork so as to make the uprights very slippery. The structure looks like 4 window frames placed side by side and put together to form a rectangle. The bottom is a flooring with a layer of sand. A lid covers it all together when the weather is cold, and especially when the rain threatens a flood, which would have disastrous effects on this undrained ground. It is raised more or less high according to the state of the day. The enclosure has ample room for 24 chambers, each with its potsherd and its occupant. Moreover, wide alleys and spacious crossroads allow long walks to be taken without hindrance. Well, at the very moment when I believe myself to have solved the housing question satisfactorily, I perceive that the glazed park will not retain its population long, if I do not invent a remedy. The glass stops short any attempt at scaling for lack of adhesive sandals. The scorpions cannot grip a surface of this kind. They flounder against the panes, it is true, and raise themselves to their full length on the support of their tail, an excellent buttress, but they have hardly left the ground before they fall back again heavily. Things go wrong in respect of the wooden uprights, though these are made as narrow as possible and varnished with particular care. The stubborn climbers clamber little by little along the stubborn climbers clamber little by little along these smooth tracks. They halt from time to time, clinging to the greasy pole, and then resume the difficult ascent. I surprise some who have reached the top and are on the point of escaping. My tweezers replace them in the fold. As the ventilation of the home demands that the lid should remain raised during the greater part of the day, the place would soon be wholly deserted if I did not see to it. I think of greasing the uprights with a mixture of oil and soap. This restrains the fugitives slightly without succeeding in stopping them. Their delicate little claws manage to sink into the pores of the wood through the substance coating it, and the ascent begins anew. Let us try a non-porous obstacle. I hang the walls with glazed paper. This time the difficulty is insurmountable for the big pot-bellied ones. It is not quite so effective with regard to the others, who, being nimbler in their gait, try to hoist themselves up and often succeed in doing so. I get the better of them only by glossing the glazed paper with soot. Henceforth there are no more escapes, though attempts at flight continue. Coming after the experiment with the forcing frames, these feats of prowess on slippery surfaces tell us there is to learn about an aptitude which the animal's corpulence was far from leading us to suspect. Like his black colleague who enters our houses, the Languedocian scorpion is a skilled climber. Behold me, then, the owner of 3 establishments, each possessing its advantages and its defects, the free colony at the end of the paddock, the wire-gauzed cages in my study, and lastly, the glazed rock garden. I shall consult them turn and turn about. Especially the last. To the evidence supplied in this manner, we will add the rare data gathered from stones turned over on the original sites. The scorpion's luxurious crystal palace, now the leading curiosity of my home, stands all the year round in the open air on a bench at a few steps from my door. Not a member of the family passes it without a glance. Taciturn creatures, shall I succeed in making you Speak?